Welcome to Anjum's audiobook library. Today I'll read you the second part of Kino, short story written by Haruki Murakami. Still, Kino could detect a glint of desire in her eyes, like a faint light deep down a mine shaft. He was sure of it, and it brought everything vividly back to him: the stab of her nails into his back, the sting of his Spanish not long slithering tongue, and the odor of his bleeding. And he and the women spoke. The man with her carefully observed Kino's expression and behavior. Kino sensed something viscous entwining itself about the couple, as if they were a deep secret only the two of them shared. They were a deep secret only the two of them shared. At the end of the summer, Kino's divorce was finalized, and he and his wife met at the bar one afternoon before it opened to take care of a few last matters. The legal issues were quickly settled, and the two of them signed the necessary documents. Kino's wife was wearing a new blue dress, her hair cut short. She looked healthier and more cheerful than he had ever seen her. She had begun a new, no doubt more fulfilling life. She glanced around the bar. "What a wonderful place," she said. "Quiet, clean and calm. Very you." A short silence followed. "But there is nothing here that really moves you." Kino imagined that these were the words she wanted to say. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked. "A little red wine, if you have some." Kino took out 2 wine glasses and poured some Napa's in Fandel. They drank in silence. They weren't about to toast to their divorce. The cat padded over and surprisingly leapt into Kino's lap. Kino patted it behind its ears. "I need to apologize to you," his wife said finally. "For what?" Kino asked. "For hurting you," she said. "You were hurt a little, weren't you?" "I suppose so," Kino said, after giving it some thought. "I'm human after all. I was hurt, but whether it was a lot or a little I can't say. I wanted to see you and tell you I'm sorry." Kino nodded. "You have apologized, and I have accepted your apology. No need to worry about it anymore. I wanted to tell you what was going on, but I just couldn't find the words." "But wouldn't we have arrived at the same place anyway?" "I guess so," his wife said. Kino took a sip of wine. "It's nobody's fault," he said. "I shouldn't have come home a day early, or I should have let you know I was coming. Then we wouldn't have had to go through that." His wife didn't say anything. "When did you start seeing that guy?" Kino asked. "I don't think we should go into that." "Better for me not to know, you mean?" "Maybe you're right about that," Kino admitted. He kept on petting the cat, which purred deeply. Another first. "Maybe I don't have the right to say this," his wife said, "but I think it would be good for you to forget about what happened and find someone new." "Maybe," Kino said. "I know there must be a woman out there who's right for you. It shouldn't be that hard to find her. I wasn't able to be that person for you, and I did a terrible thing. I feel awful about it. But there was something wrong between us from the start, as if we had done the buttons up wrong. I think you should be able to have a more normal, happy life." "Done the buttons up wrong," Kino thought. He looked at the new dress she was wearing. They were sitting facing each other, so he couldn't tell if there was a zipper or buttons at the back. But he couldn't help thinking about what he could see if he unzipped or unbuttoned her clothes. Her body was no longer his, so all he could do was imagine it. When he closed his eyes, he saw countless dark brown burn mix ringing on her pure white back, like a swarm of worms. He shook his head to dispel the image, and his wife seemed to misinterpret this. She gently laid her hand on top of his. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm truly sorry." Fall came and the cat disappeared. It took a few days for Kino to realize that it was gone. This cat, still nameless, came to the bar when it wanted to and sometimes didn't show up for a while. So if Kino didn't see it for a week or even 10 days, he wasn't particularly worried. He was fond of the cat, and the cat seemed to trust him. It was also like a good luck charm for the bar. Kino had the distinct impression that as long as it was asleep in the corner, nothing bad would happen. But when 2 weeks had passed, he began to concerned. After 3 weeks, Kino's gut told him that the cat wouldn't be coming back. Around the time that the cat disappeared, Kino started to notice snake outside, near the building. The first snake he saw was a dull brown and long. It was in the shade of the willow tree in the front yard, leisurely slithering along. Kino, a bag of groceries in hand, was unlocking the door when he spotted it. It was rare to see a snake in the middle of Tokyo. He was a bit surprised, but he didn't worry about it. Behind his building was the Nazu Museum, with its large garden. It wasn't inconceivable that a snake might be living there. But 2 days later, as he opened the door just before noon to retrieve the paper, he saw a different snake in the same spot. This one was bluish, smaller than the other one, and slimy looking. When the snake saw Kino, it stopped, raised its head slightly, and stared at him, as if it knew him. Kino hesitated, unsure what to do, and the snake slowly lowered its head and vanished into the shade. The whole thing gave Kino the creeps. 3 days later, he spied the third snake. It was also under the willow tree in the front yard. Thus, this snake was considerably smaller than the others and blackish. Kino knew nothing about snakes, but this one struck him as the most dangerous. It looked poisonous somehow. The instant it sensed his presence, it slipped away into the weeds. 3 snakes within the space of a week, no matter how you considered it, was too many. Something strange was going on. Kino phoned his aunt in Izu. After bringing her up on date on neighborhood going on, he asked if she had been seeing snakes around the house in Iowa. Snakes? His aunt said loudly in surprise. I lived there for a long time but can't recall ever seeing any snakes. I wonder if it's a sign of an earthquake or something. Animals sense disaster coming and start to act strange. If that's true, then maybe I'd better stock up on emergency rations, Kino said. Stock up on emergency rations, Kino said. That might be a good idea. Tokyo's going to get hit with a huge earthquake someday. But are snakes that sensitive to earthquake? I don't know what they are sensitive to, his aunt said. But snakes are smart creatures in ancient legend. They often help guide people, but when a snake leads you, you don't know whether it's taking you in a good direction or a bad one. In most cases, it's a combination of good and evil. It's ambiguous, Kino said. Exactly, snakes are essentially ambiguous creatures. In this legend, the biggest, smart snake hides its heart somewhere outside its body, so that it doesn't get killed. If you want to kill that snake, you need to go to its hideout when it's not there, locate the beating heart and cut it in two. Not an easy task for sure. How did his aunt know all this? The other day I was watching a show on NHK comparing different legends around the world, she explained, and a professor from some university was talking about this. TV can be pretty useful when you have time. You ought to watch some TV. Kino began to feel as if the house was surrounded by snakes. He sensed their quiet presence. At midnight, when he closed the door, the neighborhood was still, with no sound other than the occasional siren. So quiet he could almost hear a snake slithering along. He took a board and nailed shut the pet door he had built for the cat, so that no snakes would get inside the house. One night, just before 10, Kamita appeared. He had a beer, followed by his usual double white label, and ate a stuffed cabbage dish. It was unusual for him to come by so late and stay so long. Occasionally, he glanced up from his reading to stare at the wall in front of him, as if pondering something. As closing time approached, he remained until he was the last customer. Mr. Kino, Kamita said rather formally after he had paid his bill, I find it very regrettable that it's come to this. Come to this? Kino repeated. That you'll have to close the bar, even if only temporary. Kino stared at Kamita, not knowing how to respond. Close the bar? Kamita glanced around the deserted bar and then turned back to Kino. You haven't quite grasped what I am saying, have you? I don't think I have. I really like this bar a lot, Kamita said, as if confiding in him. It was quiet, so I could read and I enjoyed the music. I was very happy when you opened the bar here. Unfortunately, though, there's something missing. Missing? Kino said. He had no idea what this could mean. All he could picture was a teacup with a tiny chip in its rum. The grey cat wouldn't be coming back, Kamita said, for the time being at least, because this place is missing something. Kamita didn't reply. Kino followed Kamita's gaze and looked carefully around the bar, but saw nothing out of ordinary. He did, though, get a sense that the place felt emptier than ever, lacking vitality and color, something beyond the usual just closed for the night feeling. Kamita spoke up. Mr. Kino, you're not the type who'd willingly do something wrong. I know that very well, but there are times in this world when it's not enough just not to do wrong things. Some people use that blank space as a kind of loophole. Do you understand what I am saying? Kino didn't understand. Think it over carefully, Kamita said, gazing straight into Kino's eye. It's a very important question, worth some serious thought. The answer may not come all that easily. You're saying that some serious trouble has occurred, not because I did something wrong, but because I didn't do the right thing. Some trouble concerning this bar, or me? Kamita nodded. You could put it that way, but I'm not blaming just you, Mr. Kino. I'm at fault too for not having noticed it earlier. I should have been paying more attention. This was a comfortable place, not just for me, but for anybody. Then what should I do? Kino asked. Close the bar for a while and go far away. There's nothing else you can do at this point. I think it's best for you to leave before you have another long spell of rain. Excuse me for asking, but do you have enough money to take a long trip? I guess I could cover it for a while. Good, you can worry about what comes after and when you get to that point. Who are you anyway? I'm just a guy named Kamita, Kamita said, written with the characters for Kami, God, and Ta, field, but not read as Kanda. I have lived around here for a long time. Kino decided to plunge ahead and ask, Mr. Kamita, I have a question. Have you seen snakes around here before? Kamita didn't respond. Here's what you do. Go far away and don't stay in one place for long. And every Monday and Thursday, make sure to send a postcard. Then I will know you are okay. A postcard? Any kind of picture postcard of where you are. But who should I address it to? You can mail it to your aunt in Izu. Do not write your own name or any message whatsoever. Just put the address you're sending it to. This is very important, so don't forget. Kino looked at him in surprise. You know my aunt? Yes, I know her quite well. Actually, she asked me to keep an eye on you, to make sure that nothing bad happened. Seems like I fell down on the job, though. Who is in the world is this man? Kino asked himself. Mr. Kino, when I know that it's all right for you to return, I will get in touch with you. Until then, stay away from here. Do you understand? That night, Kino packed for the trip. It's best for you to leave before we have another long spell of rain. The announcement was so sudden and its logic eluded him. But Kamita's word has a strange persuasive power that went beyond logic. Kino didn't doubt him. He stuffed some clothes and toiletries into a medium-sized shoulder bag, and the same bag he had used on business trip. At dawn came, he pinned a notice in the front door, I apologize, but the bar will be closed for the time being. Far away, Kamita had told him, but where he should actually go, he had no idea. Should he head north or south? He decided that he would start by retracting a route he often used to take when he was selling running shoes. He boarded a highway express bus and went to Takamatsu. He would make one circuit of Shikoku and then head over to Kyushu. He checked into a business hotel near Takamatsu station and stayed there for 3 days. He wandered around the town and went to see a few movies. The cinemas were deserted during the day, and the movies were, without exception, mind-numbing. When it got dark, he returned to his home and switched on the TV. He followed his aunt's advice and watched educational programs but get no useful information from them. The second day in Takamasu was a Thursday, so he brought a postcard at a convenience store, affixed a stamp and mailed it to his aunt. As Kamita has instructed him, he wrote only her name and address. Think it over carefully, Kamita had told him. It's very important question, worth some serious thought. But no matter how seriously he considered it, Kino couldn't work out what the problem was. A few days later, Kino was staying at a cheap business hotel near Kumamoto Station in Kyushu. Low-selling, narrow, cramped bed, tiny TV set, minuscule bathtub, crummy little fridge. He felt like some awkward, bumbling giant still except for a trip to a nearby convenience store. He stayed holed up in the room all day. At the store, he purchased a small flask of whiskey, some mineral water and some crackers to snack on. He lay on his bed reading. When he got tired of reading, he watched TV. When he got tired of watching TV, he read. It was his third day in Kumamoto now. He still had money in his savings account, and if he wanted to, he could have stayed in a much better hotel. But he felt that for him just now, this was the right place. If he stayed in a small place like this, he wouldn't have to do any unnecessary thinking, and everything he needed was within reach. He was unexceptionally grateful for this. All he wished for was some music. Teddy Wilson, Vic Dickinson, Buck Clayton. Sometimes he longed desperately to listen to their old-time jazz, with its steady, dependable technique and its straightforward chords. He wanted to feel the pure joy they had in performing, their wonderful optimism. But his record collection was far away. He pictured his bar quite since he had closed it. The alleyway, the large willow tree, people reading the sign he had posted and leaving. What about the cat? If it came back, it would find its door boarded up, and were the snakes will silently encircling the house? Straight across from his 8th floor window was the window of an office building. From morning till evening he watched people working there. He had no idea what kind of business it was. Men in ties would poke in and out, while women tapped away at computer keyboards, answered the phone, filed documents. Not exactly the sort of sense to draw on one's interest. The features and the clothes of the people working there were ordinary, banal even. Kino watched them for hours for one simple reason: he had nothing else to do, and he found it unexpected, surprising how happy the people sometimes looked. Some of them occasionally burst out laughing. Why? Working all day in such an unglamorous office, doing things that at least to Kino's eyes seemed totally uninspired. How could they do that and still feel so happy? Was that some secret hidden there that he couldn't comprehend? It was about time for him to move on again. Don't stay in one place for long, Kamita had told him. Yet somehow Kino couldn't bring himself to leave this cramped little Kumamoto hotel. He couldn't think of anywhere he wanted to go. The world was a vast ocean with no landmarks. Kino, a little boat that had lost its chart and its anchor. When he spread open the map of Kyushu, wondering where to go next, he felt nauseated, as if seasick. He lay down in bed and read a book, glancing up now and then to watch the people in the office across the way. It was Monday, so he brought a postcard in the hotel gift shop with a picture of Kumamoto Castle, wrote his aunt's name and address, and slapped on a stamp. He held the postcard for a while, vacantly gazing at the castle, a stereotypical photo, the kind you expect to see on a postcard. The castle kept towering grandly in front of blue sky and puffy white clouds. No matter how long he looked at the photo, Kino could find no point of contact between himself and the castle. Then on an impulse he turned the postcard over and wrote a message to his aunt. How are you? How is your bag these days? As you can see, I'm still traveling around by myself. Sometimes I feel as if I were half transparent, as if you could see right through my internal organs, like a flesh-caught squid. Other than that, I'm doing okay. I hope to visit sometime. Kino. Kino wasn't at all sure what had motivated him to write that. Kino had strictly forbidden it. Kamita had strictly forbidden it. But Kino couldn't restrain himself. I have to somehow get connected to reality again, he thought, or else I would not be me anymore. I will become a man who doesn't exist. And before he could change his mind, he hurried out to a mailbox near a hotel and slipped the postcard inside. When he awoke, the clock next to his bed showed 2:15. Someone was knocking on his door. Not a loud knock for a firm, compact sound, like that of a skilled carpenter pounding a nail. The sound dragged Kino out of a deep sleep until his consciousness was thoroughly, even cruelly clear. The sound dragged Kino out of a deep sleep until his consciousness was thoroughly, even cruelly clear. Kino knew what the knocking meant, and he knew that he was supposed to get out of bed and open the door. Whatever was doing the knocking didn't have the strength to open the door from the outside. It had to be opened by Kino's own hand. It struck him that this visit was exactly what he had been hoping for, yet at the same time what he had been fearing above all. This was ambiguity, holding on to an empty space between two extremes. "You were hurt a little, weren't you?" his wife had asked. "I'm human after all. I was hurt," he had replied. But that wasn't true. Half of it at least was a lie. "I wasn't hurt enough when I should have been," Kino admitted to himself. "When I should have felt real pain, I slipped at it. I didn't want to take it on, so I avoided facing up to it. Which is why my heart is so empty now. The snakes have grabbed that spot and are lying, trying to hide their coldly beating hearts there." This was a comfortable place, not just for me, but for anybody, Kamita had said. Kino finally understood what he meant. Kino pulled the covers up, shut his eyes, and covered his ears with his hands. "I'm not going to look, not going to listen," he told himself. But he couldn't drown out the sound. Even if he ran to the far concern of the earth and stuffed his ears full of clay, as long as he was still alive, those knocks would relentlessly track him down. It wasn't a knocking on a door, it's a business in a business hotel. It was a knocking on the door to his heart. A person couldn't escape that sound. He wasn't sure how much time has passed, but he realized that the knocking had stopped. The room was as hushed as the far side of the moon. Still, Kino remained up under the covers. He had to be on his guard. The being outside his door wouldn't give up that easily. It was in no hurry. The moon wasn't out. Only the withered constellations darkly dotted the sky. The world belonged for a while longer to those other beings. They had many different methods. They could get what they wanted in all kinds of ways. The roots of darkness could spread anywhere beneath the earth, patiently taking their time. Searching out weak points, they could break apart the most solid rock. Finally, as Kino expected, the knocks began once more. But this time, they came from another direction, much closer than before. Whoever was knocking was right outside the window by his bed, clinging to the sheer wall of the building, 8 stories up, tap, tap, tapping on the rain-streaked glass. The knocking kept the same beat, twice, then twice again, on and on without stopping, like the sound of a heart beating with emotion. The curtains was open before he fell asleep. He had been watching the patterns the raindrops formed on the glass. Kino could imagine what he'd seen now. If he stuck his head outside the covers, no, he couldn't imagine it. He had to extinguish the ability to imagine anything. "I shouldn't look at it," he told himself. "No matter how empty it may be, this is still my heart. There is some human warmth in it, memories like seaweed wrapped around pilling on the beach, wordlessly waiting for high tide. Emotions that, if cut, would bleed. I can't just let them wander somewhere beyond my understanding." Memories can be helpful, Kamita had said. A sudden thought struck Kino, that Kamita was somehow connected with the old willow tree in front of his house. He didn't grasp how this made sense exactly, but once the thought took hold of him, things fall into pieces. Kino pictured the limbs of the tree covered in green sagging heavily down, nearly to the ground. In the summer, they provided cool shade to the earth. On rainy days, gold droplets glistened on their soft branches. On windy days, they swayed like a restless heart, and tiny birds flew over, scratching at one another, alighting neatly on the rain. Some supple branches only to take off again. Under the covers, Kino curled up like a worm, shut his eyes tight, and thought of the willow. One by one, he pictured its qualities, its color and shape and movements, and he prayed for dawn to come. All he could do was wait like this, patiently, until it grew light out and the birds woke and began their day. All he could do was trust in the birds, in all the birds, with their wings and beaks. Until then, he couldn't let his heart go blank. That void, the vacuum created by it, would draw them in. When the willow tree wasn't enough, Kino thought of a slim grey cat and its fondness for grilled seaweed. He remembered Kamita at the counter, lost in a book, young runners going through grueling repetition drills on a track, the lovely Ben Webster solo on My Romance. He remembered his wife in her new blue dress, her hair trimmed short. He hoped that she was living healthy, happy life in her new home, without, he hoped, any wounds on her body. She apologized right to my face, and I accepted that, he thought. I need to learn not just to forget, but to forgive. But the movement of time seemed not to fixed properly. The bloody weight of desire and the rusty anchor of remorse were blocking its normal flow. The continuing rain, the confused hands of the clock, the birds still fast asleep, a faceless postal worker silently shouting through postcards, his wife's lovely breast bouncing violently in the air, something obstinately tapping on the window as if luring him deeper into a suggestive maze. And this regular beat, tap, 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 that once more, tap, tap, don't look away, look right at it, someone whispered in his ear, that is what your heart looks like. The willow branches seaweed in the early summer breeze, in a dark, small room. Somewhere inside Kino, a warm hand was reaching out to him, eyes shut. He felt that hands on his soft and substantial. He had forgotten this, had been apart from it for far too long. Yes, I'm hurt, very, very deeply, he said to himself, and he wept. All the while the rain did not let up, drenching the world in a cold chill. Translated from Japanese by Philip Gabriel. Published in the print edition of February 3rd, 2nd March 2015 issue. Thank you for listening. If you liked today's short story, please subscribe, like and comment to my YouTube channel.